Yo, 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 what is going on? We are back here on Small Ball. It's a Tuesday. Unfortunately, no show yesterday. Some craziness going on, but it is what it is. So we're here on a Tuesday. I'm back in my OG setting environment, so that's exciting. Probably will be back in my temporary setting tomorrow, but more on that in a bit. The lighting is a little weird, so I apologize for that. But as the sun sets and such, hopefully it'll be a little bit more accommodating for our show. But either way, we have a packed show today. Calder Glassman's with us today, a great friend of the show. Calder, how's it going? Doing pretty well. Hopefully the audio is good for you, my audience. And if not, please let me know. So today's a Tuesday. So that means Tuesday top 10 is on the way. Ever so exciting. So here we go. We're just going to hop right into it. Calder and I have prepared our list of our top 10 starting pitchers. So very exciting. We're up to starting pitchers. Next, we'll do relief pitchers, maybe DHs, and then at the end of that, we'll start getting into our top 100 type stuff. So, Calder, I'm going to hit you with my number 10, and we'll go from there. You ready?
Yep.
Let's do it. So, at number 10, I have Zach Greinke. So, probably, a little bit lower than a lot of people would have expected. What it comes down to with Zach Greinke for me is big moments. Right? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily consider him, unreliable in big spots in the postseason or whatever the case may be, but he's not quite the pitcher that he is in the regular season. And I think a lot of that has to do with, his performance against below average teams. I think, statistically speaking, last couple of years, he's been absolutely lights out. But I think a lot of that has to do with, some of the competition. I think, he preys on some regular season type hitting. And I don't necessarily trust him in a deep postseason run. We saw when he went to Arizona, his numbers took a dip, as is expected, because Arizona is definitely a tough place to pitch. But it just kind of shows that environment plays a role. And I just don't have that. It's more of a feeling thing to me with Zach Greinke. I think statistically it's all there. Right, he's a career 3.35 ERA, but the low strikeout totals, fairly high walk rate for his strikeout totals. His walk rate is good, but for a precision guy, not necessarily absolutely tremendous. But what I would say about Greinke though is just the excellent, stats. Just in a regular season, setting, I think that he almost can't really be left off of this list. And I think, like I said, in the postseason, his numbers are below average, but still okay. So I think he definitely cracks my 10. But it comes down to the big spots, and I don't necessarily trust him there. Calder, what about you at number 10?
At number 10, I've got a guy who last year was his rookie season, very young, only 22. It's Mike Soroka for the Braves. Soroka, obviously, as I said, 22. Last year, he kind of broke on the scene, really. Everybody knew he was a pretty good pitcher. Nobody really expected him to have the type of year he did. He's a great ground ball pitcher. Probably was one of the better ground ball pitchers in the league last year. One of the better pitchers at just inducing weak contact. Didn't necessarily strike out a lot of guys. That wasn't kind of what he did. It was more of, getting those weak flyouts, those weak ground balls, which is kind of why his ERA was, about only 2.6, which is, obviously very impressive. In terms of his pitches, he's got a plus sinker. He's got a good slider, both with pretty good command. Fastball doesn't line up the radar gun, sits about 93, 94. But yeah, he last year, I think he really found a way to get guys out. And I think, he's young and it's only up from here. I expect him to be, just as good, maybe not necessarily statistically, but I think he's going to, as he pitches more games, he's going to get more of a feel for the league. And I think, it's all up from here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he didn't quite crack my list just because, like you said, the strikeout total. Um, it just seems like for a young guy and a breakout pitcher last year, don't necessarily have utter confidence that he is going to be able to continue that. But that's not to say I don't have confidence. He could very well be a top 10 pitcher this year, but he didn't crack my list. So, Calder, what about nine?
At nine, I've got a guy you just mentioned, Zach Greinke. Uh, you know, I liked what you said about kind of the big game. But I feel like for me, and I think for a lot of people, that's kind of the knock on Greinke, as you said. Especially in the regular season, the statistics are there. He's been a good pitcher statistically over his career, but I think kind of the one knock on him is that unlike some of these guys that maybe coming up on this list, he's not a guy that if you're thrown out there, in a huge postseason setting, that you can be confident is gonna go out and throw a good game. Obviously we've seen some anxiety issues with him, some other more I guess deep issues beyond just pitching. But I think with that aside, obviously he's shown that he can really pitch. He's got great control. He's got good stuff. He's got, obviously that slow curveball he's kind of well known for. That it's a pitch he can get guys out with, as well as a fastball that, again, doesn't light up the radar gun, but he commands very well. And I think obviously he's getting old. He's, I think, 36. So, probably at the tail end of his career. But I think for now, for this season and maybe even the next, I think he's still an elite pitcher. And, that's why he's at number 9 for me.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting you mentioned kind of, and I said against good teams, but also you mentioned that sort of stress factor, right? Not necessarily known as a hardcore, free and easy guy, right? A stat that stands out to me is in the new Yankee Stadium, his career ERA is 11.57, and in his career at old Yankee Stadium, his ERA was over 8. So that's just one example of sort of those New York City big time outings. Does not get the job done. Last year, a former Dodger, but last year in Dodger Stadium, against the Dodgers, ERA over 5. So actually 19.69 on the road to be exact, and then a little bit better at home. But at number 9 for me, I have Hyunjin Ryu. I didn't expect to put him on this list, but he had an excellent season. Now, a lot of people think of him as a breakout guy last year, led the league in ERA. But what people don't realize, and what I didn't realize until I did a little bit of research, is that he has a career sub-3 ERA. A career sub-3 ERA. One awful season, I think it was his 3rd season, but in his career, he has a 2.99 ERA. Complete finesse guy, just, dots up, not a lot of walks, doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but induces ground balls. I'm really interested to see what he's able to do in Toronto. And he performed, adequately, if not better in the postseason last year. So that was a question mark that I had about him, in the postseason last year. But he stood up. He stood up for the test, and I have him 9. And then at 8, I have Charlie Morton. So a lot of people like Charlie Morton a lot. One of those guys that comes to Houston and has, a strong, breakout season in 2017 and is able to carry that now into his Rays tenure as well. Elite stuff, big time spin, big time velo, and pretty solid command as well. I just don't know if he has quite the experience, the pedigree, of a guy that I want to throw out there in a Game 7, right? He did get that, that he locked down Game 7, in 2017 at the back end as a reliever. But I think he's been a little bit shaky in big time outings, similar to Greinke. Better stuff, a little bit worse command. But I don't necessarily trust him. His pedigree has been decent so far, but I don't think he has enough experience necessarily starting big games. Calder, who you got at 8?
At 8, I've got Mike Clevenger for the Indians. This for me was interesting. I kind of flip flopped on him a bit. Wasn't exactly sure whether he was going to make my list or not. But in the end, when you look at him, he's one, he's a big guy, 6'4", kind of lanky. That's kind of some characteristics that you want in a pitcher. But I think the thing that really sets him apart for me is his stuff. He strikes out a lot of batters. He misses a lot of bats, which is obviously something. And those in an elite pitcher you're going to look for. And then his stuff, can run his fastball up in the high 90s. Slider. He's got a good swing and miss slider. I think the knock on him is some of the injury problems he's had, especially last year. Didn't really put together a full season. Had some back issues. Had some knee issues this offseason. But I think, if he was able to put, if he was able to put 30 plus starts together last year, I think we could have potentially been talking about him in the Cy Young race with some of those guys that are going to be coming up later on this list. But, for me, I think as long as he's staying injury free, he's got absolutely filthy stuff. And I think, no reason to think he can't be up there with those elite pitchers in the next couple of years. So I've got him at 8.
Yeah, he's not a guy that quite cracked my list, but definitely a viable option. For me, look, the thing with Mike Clevinger, it's kind of an interesting situation where I had to leave, a couple Indians off this list. I considered a Shane Bieber, and there's a particular Cardinals pitcher that I also left off the list. And I think, I've talked about this a lot on the show. But I think both the Indians with Roberto Perez and the Cardinals with Yachty behind the plate, I think a lot of their pitchers, their stats play up a little bit because of what they have behind the plate. And I think a guy like Clevinger benefits from that. Bieber as well, Cardinals guy that I'm sure we're going to get to at some point. But, more on that. But I just think, and that's not a knock on them, obviously, right? They don't have control over that. But I do think that guys like Bieber, guys like Clevinger definitely benefit a lot from, a guy like Roberto Perez behind the plate. Calder, what about number 7?
Number 7, I've got a guy that I'm sure you have coming up on your list as well, Walker Buehler for the Dodgers. So he's another guy, young, only 25, but he's really proven that he can win the big games. I think in terms of mechanically, he's got explosive stuff. And he's got a 5-pitch arsenal, which is always valuable. Though he's still kind of developing that changeup into a viable option. But once he gets that down, I think he's got definitely a viable 5-pitch arsenal. The fastball being the centerpiece of that, running it up high 90s. We've seen 96, 97, 98, and still developing the off speed, especially the slider and the curve to become true swing and miss pitches. I think those both have shown great promise, and both at times have been really good swing and miss strikeout pitches. But I think he can really even improve upon them. But I think for me, the thing that stands out most about him is just the intangibles. He's a competitor like we've rarely seen before. He's got a great kind of fire in him. He's a gamer. Like loves the spotlight, loves the big game. Wants to go out there and win. We saw him absolutely dominate in the postseason last year in the World Series. We saw him with that kind of 7-inning lights out start against Boston. So I think for me, the thing that stands out most about him is just his ability to go out there and kind of be as cool as a cucumber and just absolutely shut down, these opposing lineups, these star-studded lineups. So I think he's definitely promising and definitely, going to have a good year this year.
Absolutely, and absolutely a guy that I do have coming up. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. But another young guy that seems like he's only going to get better, I have at number 7. That's Tyler Glasnow. I actually, if I'm the Rays, I see Tyler Glasnow as my ace and not Charlie Morton. I think it's very close. But Glasnow's, first of all, the stuff is, the spin rate, velo, it's absurd, right? Huge big bending curveball, runs it up triple digits, and has the command, to pair with that. From the, you talked about Walker Buehler as a competitor. Tyler Glasnow doesn't necessarily have that competitive fire. He seems like a kind of mellow, cool guy. But as far as, as a young guy throwing out there, in the postseason last year, in probably the best division in baseball last year, a lot of big outings. He was cool as a cucumber, not to steal your phrase there, but I think I trust him really against any lineup in this league. I don't trust him. I don't worry at all that he's going to, fold under the pressure or under, the difficulties of facing a top flight lineup. I think he can go up against any team in any game, any spot, and he's going to be his best. It's interesting. In Game 5 last year, the ALDS, when he took the loss against the Astros, he actually had excellent stuff in that game and located very, very well. But obviously, we know, the Astros had a bit of an idea what was coming, so he wasn't, unfortunately, as successful as, he would have liked to be. But if you go back and look at that tape, his stuff in that game was outstanding. He actually said after the game he felt like it was the best his stuff had been in a long time. And had trouble understanding how he got pieced up. And obviously we know now what went on. But I think he's, next, 4 or 5 years, I think he's a top 3 pitcher in the game. I just think that, the combination of stuff and, makeup and pitchability, on the mound, just that sort of character and those intangibles, I think that he's underrated. I think he's really, really, really good, and I think that he's going to be good for a long time. Number 6 is a guy that was very similar to Glasnow coming up and is no longer a prospect by any means, Stephen Strasburg. Now, I expected to have him lower on this list because of the injuries. We all know, right, Strasburg's injury history. He's been on innings limits in multiple seasons. The stuff is obviously there. Command is good, not great. But I needed, I just don't think I can put him any lower than 6. Because if it's Game 7 and I got to roll someone out there, there's almost nobody. I really would have to, struggle to find somebody that I'd rather have in a Game 7 in a big spot on the mound than Stephen Strasburg. I think when you talk about clutch, when you talk about intangibles, I think he's all that, right? And I think that, as banged up as he's been, right, and as inconsistent as he's been, if it's October, this is, I think that this is top 3 for me in terms of Stephen Strasburg. Now, the injuries hold him back, the inconsistency, some command issues, but the postseason production, is just too good for me to have him any lower than 6. Calder, what about you, number 6?
At number 6, I got a guy that, you referenced earlier that you actually ended up leaving off your list, which is Jack Flaherty for the Cardinals. For me, young guy, was only really in a second kind of real full season last year. Definitely struggled in the first half. We didn't really see kind of the pitcher he was until about halfway through the year. That being said, his second half was just absolutely absurd. The numbers here in his final 16 starts, he had a .93 ERA with 130 strikeouts in 106 innings. And in that span, he also held his opponents to a 139 batting average. So, for me, I think with that second half, there's no way I could leave him off this list and really put him any lower than 6, just given the absolute dominance he showed. In terms of, mechanics, fastball doesn't necessarily light up the radar gun, but it's got a lot of life to it. I guess a lot of swings and misses with that. Off-speed stuff, pretty good, definitely a plus. Just does a good job of keeping runners off base, doesn't necessarily have the strikeout numbers as some of these guys, coming up that are going to be higher than him, but still, gets a good amount of strikeouts. And again, he's very young, got a lot of swagger to his game. We only haven't seen him much in the postseason. It was a little bit up and down in the postseason last year. Had 2 pretty solid starts against the Braves and the DS, and then kind of laid an egg against the Cardinals in that champion, or against the Nationals, in that championship series. So, I think we're going to need to see more of him. But, from what I saw in those last 16 starts, I think we can see a really elite pitcher who's going to, definitely win some Cy Youngs in these next 10 years.
Yeah, this is a guy that a lot of people really like, and I don't think he's quite at that level for me. Like I said, I alluded to it, but I left him off my list. I think a lot of those Cardinals pitchers, that staff, that bullpen as well, really, really benefit from top-level coaching and obviously one of the best catchers I've ever seen behind the plate in Yadi Molina. Jack Flaherty, of course, has this stuff. I think command, at times is up and down. And he was always a good but not great prospect, and now he's turned himself into, arguably a top 10 pitcher. But I just think he's a hair overrated, and I don't necessarily have a great reason for it. But you mentioned the postseason struggles, obviously a small sample size, but did get pieced around a little bit in the in the division series, or rather the championship series against the Nationals. I don't know, right? It's kind of a small sample size. It's basically half a season of dominance, and that's about it. Coming up, never really projected to be a top level arm. So I'm sensing a little bit of a fluke, but obviously, the ceiling is very, very high. I believe it's your turn again, Calder, to give us your number 5.
Yeah. At 5, I've got a guy you just mentioned at your number 6 spot, which is Steven Strasburg. Again, I liked the points you kind of made about him. He struggled in the past with walks. We saw him improve upon that a little bit last year. And, of course, the injuries, obviously Tommy John a couple years back. But I think given the fact that he managed to stay pretty healthy last year and the fact that, for me, what really stood out about him last year was, obviously the big games he pitched in. I think, game 2 and game 6 in the World Series, you're talking about a guy that goes into Houston, in game 6 specifically, goes into Houston, hostile environment against, a great team, arguably one of the best lineups in the last 5 years, and just punches them in the mouth, goes 8+ innings, 1 run, or 1 or 2 runs, I think it was. And that for me, just being able to do that in such a big spot, in a game like that, he's really proven that he's going to give you great stuff. And I think, that there's no one barely anybody. You can make the argument for maybe 2 or 3 guys, but there's really barely anybody I'd rather have in a big spot in October at this point.
Absolutely. It's hard to leave a World Series MVP off the list, especially 1 year removed. But yeah, I mean, we said it all. I mean, he's a competitor, like we said. When I think back to that Nationals run, he is definitely the centerpiece of that memory for me. Him standing on the mound in big spots and just getting out after out after out. My number 5 is Justin Verlander. Verlander's a tricky one for me, very tricky. I mean, he obviously, 300 strikeouts last year. That's a number that is seldom met. But the home runs allowed it's astounding, right? For a pitcher of his quality, ERA in the 2.5s and 3rd in the league in home runs allowed. He was atop the league for quite some time as well. So very interesting. I think that speaks to his ability to pitch with runners in scoring position. Obviously, if you take those home runs out, he's one of the greatest pitchers. That's one of the greatest seasons of all time. Obviously, you can't do that, but I think that speaks to his ability to pitch with runners on base, big spots from the stretch. Now, obviously, he's got to limit the long ball, and that's why he's only 5th on my list. And again, in big spots, right? There was that huge Soto home run in Game 4. And I think that it's just, it comes down to a loss of focus, it seems, right? He's had, second half of the year was tremendous for him last year. And then he comes in, in the ALCS, struggled a little bit. And then in the World Series, decent at best. So it's like the big spots, it's the long balls. And I think he's only, unfortunately for him, I think he's on the decline, right? He honestly, at one point in his career, he was clearly the best pitcher in this game. And I think now, Astros kind of headed towards probably a decline, and age-wise, he is as well. I think that this season, he's probably still a top 5 guy, but I don't think he's any higher than 5 for me. So my 4, we talked about Walker, Bueller, I have him at 4. I think in 3 years, this is the best pitcher in baseball. I don't think I've seen a young pitcher with the combination of stuff and not even stuff really, but velo and command, right? It's astounding, right? He runs it up to triple digits, big bending curveball, 5-pitch mix, like you said, and just dots up. And he has that competitive fire. That one blip in the postseason, grand slam to Acuna in his rookie year. But I think this is the best pitcher in baseball over the next 10 years. I really do. We're looking now for guys with top flight velo and spin rate. That's what analytics tell us wins games. I don't necessarily agree, but he has that to pair with outstanding command as well. So that's just absurdly impressive, right? It's the combination of stuff and command that I think makes him, with a little bit more maturity, a little bit more experience, I think makes him the best pitcher in the game. Right now I have him 4th because he doesn't quite have that experience, a little bit inconsistent, struggled a bit in the postseason last year and in his rookie year. And I worry about injuries as well because, he's never really had that top. I mean, it seems, honestly, this is unfortunate to say, but it seems like every young pitcher at some point has arm trouble. He's been fairly healthy, so I'm not sure how long, it's going to hold up. He's a biggish guy, but not like a massive, guy that, somebody throwing triple digits. I just don't know arm wise. So he's 4. Calder, what about you, number 4?
At number 4, I've got a guy you just mentioned, I guess 2 players ago, which is Justin Verlander. In terms of a guy who's had experience in the big spots, he's obviously the first one. Been pitching for a very long time. Postseason spots with the Tigers, had those postseason spots with the Astros. Has the intensity to give up the long ball, which was definitely a problem for him last year. Gave up a lot of home runs, as you mentioned. But I think besides that, again, he had just an incredible year. Obviously, Cy Young, knows how to get the great hitters out. He's done it for a while. The combination of that upper 90s fastball and that just kind of lethal curve, it's just one of the best 1-2 combinations in the game for me in terms of striking batters out. And then as you said, he's starting to decline for sure. I think there's no doubt that in the next 5 years we're going to see his numbers decline drastically. But you look at the past 2 years, I mean, there's no real sign of that for me statistically. He's been arguably the biggest workhorse in the game in terms of a starting pitcher the last 2 years. Started 34 games each of the last 2 years and managed to perform at a high level. So that for me is obviously very impressive. I think that being said, I don't think he's going to be able to do that again this year. I think, there could be some injury concern, though he's been pretty durable. I don't think a pitcher can really keep that up for that long, that many innings, that many starts. So I think we'll see him start to decline a little bit this year. But, obviously with that kind of stuff and that, that ability to pitch in a big game, I think you can't really put him below 4 or 5 for me.
Yeah, you make a fair point for sure. What about number 3?
Number 3, I've got Max Scherzer. So this was interesting for me. I kind of toggled around with him a bit. But, Scherzer, he's a guy who's got filthy stuff, has had filthy stuff for years, can strike batters out, induces weak contact, doesn't give up many home runs. He's kind of got everything you want in a pitcher. The knock on him is some injury concern. Obviously, got scratched from that World Series start because of his back stiffness, which was obviously pretty tough. I think there are some people that really don't trust him to be able to start necessarily 27, 28 plus games in these next couple years, which I think is obviously valid. But that being said, in terms of pure ability to get batters out, he's obviously one of the best, and he's shown that he's one of the best. Misses bats a lot, induces weak contact, just can get guys out, and that's obviously what you're looking for in a pitcher. Still has a obviously an elite fastball, which I think is definitely kind of the centerpiece of his arsenal. And then I think there's something to be said for last year, finally getting it done in the postseason, just getting that monkey off his back. I think for a while that was kind of bearing down on him. The Nationals postseason struggles. I think he's been there for a lot of it. Obviously, another guy like Harper, left this year, but he's kind of stuck through it. And I think that was definitely kind of a burden for him, knowing that they've been there and they couldn't get it done. And I think it's almost kind of like a burden being lifted, knowing that they finally were able to get it done. And I think that's going to just only benefit him in the coming years, especially next year. So that's who I've got at number 3.
Yeah, so obviously he's coming up on my list, but I have DeGrom at number 3, Jacob DeGrom, and here's why I have Scherzer higher. I'll talk about that. I think Scherzer, obviously, the stuff, the competitive fire, obviously as good as it gets, right? I think Max Scherzer's changeup is the best pitch in baseball right now and has been for quite some time. Jacob DeGrom last year, and a lot of people are probably going to, not love this take. He's 11-8. And for a very long time, that's been the knock on him, is he just doesn't win enough games. And the weak roster argument is honestly no longer valid, right? This is a Mets team that last couple of years has thought of themselves as playoff contenders, now probably are playoff contenders. Mets fans consistently, when the topic of Jacob DeGrom's record comes into play, it's weak rosters, not enough run support, right? Things along those lines. But you can't have it both ways, right? If the Mets see themselves as contenders, which I think they do, and I think, playoff contenders, that is, I think they should, then that argument is no longer valid. And I don't think I can have him above Max Scherzer and my number 1 guy winning 11 games in a season, right? Obviously, Jacob DeGrom's stuff, command is impeccable. Consistency is impeccable as well. But I just don't think, and he hasn't also had the experience, in the postseason. He's had some experience, but it hasn't been great experience. So I definitely would trust Scherzer more in a big game. The injury, stuff with Scherzer is valid, but, I just think that DeGrom needs to just win a couple more games. And I think that's all that it takes for me to put him at number 2. And I understand the run support argument, right? It does seem like, something's up. He does not get a lot of run support. But if if it's game 7 or a wild card game and I need somebody to win a baseball game, I'd rather go with Max Scherzer. So that's who I have at number 2 as well. Spoiler alert. We talked about Max Scherzer. No need to go into any more depth, really. But changeup is outstanding, right? 5-pitch mix, competitive fire, big game pitcher. I have Scherzer. I just think he's more of a winner, honestly, than Jacob DeGrom, so I have him at number 2. Calder, round us out with your 2 and then your number 1.
All right. My number 2, a guy you just mentioned, Jacob DeGrom. Obviously no need to go into him too much given what we just talked about, but I think though he's obviously, we just talked about doesn't win a lot of games like some of these other guys. I think he's just all around dominant in pretty much every facet of pitching. When you look at pitchers, you're always looking for like that one weakness. Is it injuries? Is it, command? Is it velocity? With him, I really don't see a weakness. I think all around he's just a great pitcher. back-to-back Cy Young awards, great command, powerful fastball, can get guys out with that slider. And I think in terms of, though he hasn't been able to necessarily win as many games as these other guys, you look at the last 2 years, the only two players who have had a higher WAR than him in the last 2 years are position players, mind you, who are playing every day, and that's Mike Trout and Mookie Betts, who are probably two of the top 3-4 players in this game. So I think though he hasn't necessarily been able to put up the wins, I think that he's still a great pitcher, but for me, he just wasn't enough to get to number one.
Speaking of number one, Calder, who you got?
And at my number one, I've got Garrett Cole for the Yankees. So, I mean, what can be said about this guy other than he's just an absolute beast? I mean, last year, just probably one of the best years we've seen out of a pitcher in the last 10. Even though he didn't win that Cy Young, personally, I think he was robbed, and I think a lot of other people believe that too. But I mean, there's just, again, I don't think he's necessarily as well rounded as a guy like DeGrom, but you talk about a guy that just dominates hitters. Hitters get up and just have no idea what hit them, and they're already back in the dugout because they struck out. I mean, just insane stuff. 5-pitch pitcher, just strikes out batters at an astronomical rate. You're talking about a 13 Ks per nine last year, 13 plus Ks per nine. That's just insane for a starting pitcher. We've rarely seen that in the modern era. And again, good command. I think is just though I think that Houston pitching coach and front office kind of helped him out with the analytics on the spin rate. I don't really see a reason why that can't translate to New York. Obviously, a bit of a better ballpark for hitters, but I don't think that's going to make too much of a difference. I think the way he strikes guys out just makes up for that, and I think there's no reason to believe he's not going to be able to just kind of have the sort of year he had last year. So that's why I've got him at number one.
For sure. Before we move on to our game for today, I have Garrett Cole number one as well. And like you said, what more can be said, right? He basically, I don't think, he lost a game for, what was it, like 6 months or something ridiculous like that. I do worry about a decline. I don't think he's going to have the year that he quite had last year. Whether it's the coaching, whether it's something illegal, I don't know, but Astros pitchers definitely seem to perform better than other pitchers. Should that translate? Who knows? I guess it depends on, the rationale behind all that, or the reasons behind all that. But I think probably best fastball in the league, honestly, right? The velo, the late life, and the command, right? It's ridiculous, right? I talk about Walker Buehler's combination of velo and command. I think Garrett Cole is even a tick above Buehler in that regard. Excuse me. So that's gonna do it for our Tuesday top 10. Just to finish it up, Calder, in reverse order from 10 to 1, had Mike Soroka, Zach Greinke, Mike Clevenger, Walker Buehler, Jack Flaherty, Steven Strasburg, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, and Garrett Cole. And I had Zach Greinke, Hyunjin Ryu, Charlie Morton, Tyler Glasnow, Steven Strasburg, Justin Verlander, Walker Buehler, Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and Garrett Cole. So I'm trying to think of a new name for this game, because the former name for this game is copyrighted, and I don't want to steal any names. We would never want to go down that path. But alas, Calder, we are back with some more of we'll call it Guess Shoe for today. That's the interim name. But Calder and I will go back and forth asking yes or no questions to try to guess which player has randomly been selected for us to guess. It is a starting current active player, excluding relief pitchers and excluding designated hitters as well. So I was victorious in our last game, Calder. but hopefully, for Calder, he can have a bit of a bounce back performance. It was a very good game, back and forth. Came down to the wire. Calder, are you ready to get into some guess shoe for today?
Yeah.
Let's get to it. So Calder, you can go first. Again, since you are the challenger, and let's do it. So again, yes or no questions. And for the entirety of the game, I'm not sure how many rounds we're going to get to. We have about 20 minutes. Hopefully we can get to like 3. I think that would be good. You cannot ask the same type of question twice. So I'll get into more specifics on that as we go. But for example, if you ask, is this player a first baseman? For the entirety of the rest of the game, you cannot ask, is this player this position? Right? So here we go. Calder, give me your yes or no question. I am going to write down our questions so we remember them. And Calder and I can Google things about the player that the opponent is trying to guess. But we cannot do any research to help us guess our player. Calder, go ahead.
All right. Is your player in the AL?
No. He is not. Okay. Is this player okay? Does this player let's think about this for a second. Does this player throw left-handed?
No, I don't. No, he does not.
Okay.
All right. Is your player in the NL East?
No.
All
Is
right.
this player in one of the Central divisions?
No, he's not.
I see.
All right. Let's see. Does your player play in a Western time zone?
Yes. Sneeze.
All
All right. Does this player Does this player play north of Topeka, Kansas? And you can do some geographical research if needed.
Yeah, that's going to take me a second.
Actually, that might not help me too much because if it's close, I might not even know if that helps me or not. But we'll figure that out as we go. Hopefully, my geographical skills are up to speed.
Yes, they do play north of Topeka, Kansas.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay. Wonderful.
Did your team have more than 75 wins last year?
Did this team have more than 75 wins last year? Is that your question?
Or actually, can you make it, did this team have more than 80?
The answer to that is no.
All right.
No. So we're dealing with a north-ish team on one of the coasts, most likely. Okay, Calder. Is this an American League player?
Yes, it is.
Interesting.
All right. Let's see. Whew. Does your team play in Petco Park?
They do.
All right.
They do. I mean, a lot of teams play in Petco Park, but they play more games at Petco Park than any other team.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it's an American League team. I'm gonna think out loud here. American League team. Okay. Right-handed thrower. Is that correct? I think I.
Yeah.
Okay. Does this player play the outfield?
Yes, he does.
Okay.
All right. Does your player? If I ask, does he pitch? Can I ask more questions relating to position, or does that pitcher count as position?
I think that's a position-related question. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Then, did your player have more than 10 innings pitched?
No.
Okay.
That's a fair question. Okay. Right-handed throwing outfielder, American League. I'm zoning in on like A's, Orioles. I don't think. Okay, let me do some thinking here. Put on the old thinking cap. Do we Mariners?
Going back to the Topeka, Kansas question, I believe it's north, but it's. This is evidently a good question because it kind of gives away some, but it's north, but it could be. It's pretty close.
Okay. Interesting. So a controversial question.
It is, yeah, very close.
So a fairly centrally located team as far as longitude goes. Okay. So I think I've zoned in on two teams. Outfield, starting outfielder. Okay. Calder. Calder, does this player bat left-handed?
No, they do not.
Okay.
Actually, I looked up the longitude, and it's a bit south of Topeka, Kansas, longitude-wise.
Okay.
All right.
But it's close. Okay. This is tough. That was a dumb question. I gotta just throw that out there. My last question was a waste, but we'll move on.
Is your player an outfielder?
No. Calder, is my player on the Oakland A's?
Yes.
Okay.
Whew. All right. Is your player
Indeed.
Is your player under 6'1"?
So
6'1"
6 feet or below, or
let's say yes, or yeah, 6'1" or below.
okay. Some technical difficulties here. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure I get this right. Fortunately, the technical difficulties are difficult, as to be expected, but I will use my secondary device here. He is not 6'1" or below.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. All right, we're definitely zoning in. So it's a right-handed hitting, right-handed throwing Oakland Athletics outfield. So I'm not entirely sure how MLB.com has arranged this defense, but I have to start guessing because you are getting close. So I'm going to say Calder. Is this player Steven Piscotty?
No.
Dang it.
All right. Let's see. Does this player bat right-handed?
Yes, he does.
All right.
Calder, is this player Ramon Laureano?
No, it's not.
Oh my goodness gracious. All right.
All right, I got it down to 2. I guess I got to guess. Is this player Manny Machado?
It is, in fact, Manny Machado.
Oh.
Now, what's interesting is Calder did go first. So I guess if I get on this turn, it's almost like a tie, but I'll give you the win because we didn't really establish that rule. But I'm going to guess anyway. I just don't know how this lineup is situated right now. I'm going to say, is it Chris Davis?
No.
Is it Chad Pinder?
No.
I don't know. I guess the only other option would be I don't know. Who is it?
Mark Canha.
They have him in what position? In left?
Yeah, they have him in left right now.
And Piscotty in right?
I believe so.
That's tough. Yeah, okay. That was a close one. That was very, very close. We both narrowed it down pretty well there. And we could probably, we've tied 1-1 so far, so we could probably fit in one more round if you're up for it, Calder.
I think I can do one more round.
All right, yeah. Let's get a move on then. I have mine prepared. Do you want me to go first this time?
Sure.
Okay.
Wait, let me just make sure I have my player here.
All right. That was tough. Mark Canha. I always think of him as a first baseman, but obviously not the starting first baseman. That was tough. Yeah. But I think I kind of let that one slip away. But anyway, here we go. All right, Calder. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, cool. So I have also our list of questions already asked, so that we know what we can't ask. But now it gets tough, very, very tough without all these questions. Okay, Calder. Does the player that I'm trying to guess play for a team that has blue in their team color scheme?
Yes, they
Okay,
do.
wonderful. Okay.
All right. Gotta think about this one.
Yeah, now we got to start fresh. It's weird, right? It's like a whole. It's
very
like you
difficult.
just go back to the start, and you don't have all these questions. If you want me to, have you been writing down the questions too, or would you like me to read what you've already asked, just so that you have the sense?
I haven't been writing down, but I think I remember.
All right, cool.
Let's see. Does your team have? Was your team a playoff team last year?
They were, Calder. They were. A big time question there for Calder. Okay, Calder. Did my player Calder bat higher than 260 in 2019?
Yes, they did.
Interesting.
All right. Whew. I gotta think about this. Does my team play in a state that borders either the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean?
No. A good question.
Okay.
Does this player play for a team that was No, that's a bad question. Is this player above 6'2"? So 6'3" or higher?
No, they're not.
Okay.
All right. Was this team a division winner last year?
Yes.
All right.
All right. So he's a pretty good batsman. Short, not necessarily short, but not particularly tall. Calder. Blue in the jerseys. Oh, I forgot to start. Okay, blue in the jerseys. All right. Does this player's home stadium have a dome, either retractable or stationary? Okay.
No, it's not. All right. Did this team win? Did this team win above 100 games last year?
Nope.
All right.
Let me just clarify. Oh, I'm sorry. They did. They did.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah. My apologies. Blue. Blue, you say. All right. So I'm thinking we got like a lot of teams had blue. Actually, that's kind of annoying. But all right. Was this player's team a playoff team last year? Ooh, nice. Nice.
All right. Did this player have above 10 strikeouts on the mound last year?
No.
Okay.
All right.
And just to clarify, did we say no DHs?
Yeah, no, yeah, no.
Okay.
No, yes. No DHs. There are no DHs involved
Okay.
in this game. All right. Okay. Does this player play his home games in a city with more than 4 million people?
Gotta check that. More than 4 million people.
Indeed.
At the last time it was taken on Google, no.
Fascinating. Okay.
But this was taken in 2018. I'll give you the population is within. I'll give you a hint since the population changes. It's within 1.5 million of that.
Okay.
Let's say.
Okay. Sure.
Or we'll say it's within 1 million.
Sure. Okay.
All right. Does my player wear an outfielder's glove?
Yes.
Okay.
I assume. I mean, I'm not particularly educated in this, player's equipment, but I would assume so. Yeah. I didn't ask about position yet, right? No, but I can't. So let me think. But he's a hitter who hit over 260. Okay. Very, very difficult, Calder. Very difficult. Was this player an all-star last year?
Yes.
Fascinating.
All right. Has my player won a Gold Glove?
That's a very good question. I'm going to have to do a little research about that. No.
All right.
No. All right, I have a sense. An all-star level hitter on a playoff team with blue. Calder, did my player in 2019 hit more than 30 home runs?
I have to check that. Give me a second. No, they did not.
Fascinating. Okay.
All right, I've got it done too. Is my player Max Kepler?
Yes, it is Max Kepler. Very well done. Very well done. I guess I'll take one stab at it. Is my player Max Muncy?
No.
Justin Turner?
Nope.
I give up.
Mookie Betts.
Oh, no. Oh, no. I completely, wow, that was a tough one. Obviously not, it shouldn't have been, but I completely forgot that he was on the Dodgers now. Huh. Wow. One of my top 3 favorite players in the league, and I could not guess him. Well, Calder, I got to congratulate you on a very strong performance today. 2 for 2 against me today in our edition of Guess Shoe. Better name to come. So I think that brings the season series now to 2-1 in your favor. So congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's going to do it for today's edition of Small Ball. Very fun show today. I'm having a lot of fun with this game. We have more of it scheduled later this week. We have some draft stuff coming later this week, including my first round. Again, I keep calling it a mock draft because I don't really have a better name for it, but it's not a mock draft. It's what I would do if I was each GM picking these prospects. So, yeah, Calder, it's been a pleasure having you on today. Have a good one. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you guys again so much for watching, guys and girls. Really, really fun show today. We'll be back at it probably tomorrow. I'm trying to squeeze in an off day like in our schedule now. So I'm thinking either like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't know. There's a lot of options, in that regard. But the 4 days in a row, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for various reasons. So thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, some suggestions, things you want to see, things you like, things you didn't. Recommend if you feel inclined to do so, and all that if you feel inclined to do so. So thanks again so much for watching. Have a healthy, happy, and safe rest of your Tuesday. And come pop into our next edition of the show. If you don't follow the Small Ball Show Instagram, you most certainly should. That's where a lot of the news and scheduling business goes down. So thank you again so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Most likely be back at it tomorrow, but if not, then almost certainly Thursday. So have a good one. Thanks for tuning in. Again, feedback. Need feedback. I want to know what you liked, what you didn't. Let me know some things you want to see. I can definitely fill, some of this time with stuff that you guys want to hear and see. So let me know. Have a good one, guys and girls. I will see you. You will see me, rather, later this week on Small Ball. Peace.